Hi, I'm Laura Miolla from Moxie Life Coach, and this week I am talking about the 3 big surprises I experienced in my divorce. Divorce is a scary, unknown process. You never know what it's going to be beforehand. You really have to experience it in that moment. And for a lot of people, that's frightening. That's very scary. But we tend to walk into this process thinking we know what it will be like. And I can tell you, it is never like what we think it's going to be beforehand. It's not as scary as we think it's going to be. Neither is it a process that we can control if we think we can. So for me personally, one of the biggest surprises I experienced in my divorce was I had this perception of divorce that said, whoever has the most money walking into this process wins, right? Because this is war, and you need, your assets and resources, and the longer you can fund something, you will win. Now, it was a big surprise to me because in my marriage, I was the breadwinner. I was the one who brought in the money. And what ended up happening is I walked into my divorce thinking, okay, I'm the one with the money. I can control this. I'm going to be the person in charge. And I completely had the rug swept out from underneath me when my ex's family came in. And they were supporting this divorce, and they gave him lots of money, or gave, at least to his lawyer, they gave lots of money to his lawyer. And she was able, using a very smart strategy, to keep bringing me to court and bleed me out financially. So I thought I'd walked into this process thinking one thing, and actually discovered that anything can change at any time. And that my idea that, okay, this is going to be a battle, this is going to be war, but I can control it. I have the upper hand. I have the higher ground. That never happened. That was a huge shock to me. And now, as a divorce coach, I know that walking into this process, if it's war, will make it war. You don't want that. That is not the goal. The goal is not that this is a battle. The goal is, what do I have to do to create the life I want when this is over? That's the goal. It's not about winning. It's not about who has enough money. The person who truly wins in this process is the person who can get through it with as much peace as possible. And with more cash in their pocket, not going to a lawyer, so that they can fund their future vision. That's important. So that was shock number 1 for me. And that was a big lesson for me to learn, is regardless of what I think I know, I'm not really going to know until I'm in it. And then I'm going to have to get rid of my preconceived notions, my self-limiting beliefs, and actually trust what's clear and wise about me. So the other big shock to me was that divorce takes a lot longer than you think it will. So the process is pretty complicated. The more you have to untangle when it comes to, family, children, businesses, the longer it will take. I had this idea that we're going to just, go in there like clinically as a surgeon and cut things apart and go our separate ways as quickly as possible. That didn't happen. And it doesn't happen in most cases that I see as a divorce coach. The only way to speed this process up is to be as prepared as possible before you walk into it. And by prepared, I mean having an understanding of what is being discussed, what is the agenda, what points need to come to agreement to create a divorce agreement, having all of your financial documents prepared and ready to go from day one. That's one of the reasons why I created my divorce toolkit, because you need to have a checklist that says, this is everything I need to do to get started. This is how I find a lawyer. This is how I find a mediator. This is, what I need to know before I sign an agreement. These are all the financial worksheets I need to go through. These are all the documents I need to bring with me. If you can prepare that, you can then start creating micro agreements with your ex that leads up to your divorce agreement. And then what you're paying for in terms of a mediator's or lawyer's time is a focus on the things you can agree on so that you get their sense of what other people have done and you can come to a compromise. So it's going to be longer if you aren't prepared. And I thought I was prepared. I had no idea what the agenda was, how we walk through it and make different agreements, what's important to talk about first, what comes second. Having all those financial documents is critical, and that takes a lot of time. It's a lot of time where you have someone else, a mediator or a lawyer, on the clock. The other thing that makes it really drawn out, and we don't talk about it, is in every state in the United States, there is a nisi period. And it's either 3 or 4 months, depending upon your state. And what that period is, it's a waiting period after the court has approved your agreement, where your agreement's not yet final. You have to get through this nisi period before your divorce is final. So most people think that when the judge signs it, oh, I'm done. No, you're not done. Nothing happens in that nisi period, hopefully, but it's a waiting period that allows you, if you reconcile, you can say, wait, we made a mistake. We want to come back together. But that nisi period will lengthen the time of your divorce. And you have to be really careful about that nisi period because you are still married. Once the judge signs your agreement, you can't run out and go get married the next day to somebody else. I've heard lawyers who tell me people have done that, and they've done it because they did not know that you're still legally married. So this is going to be a long process. The best way to get through it is to be prepared, to get some knowledge around what goes into that divorce agreement so you can start deciding what you want, how you're going to negotiate. The third big surprise for me is that once you do that preparation, once you go through a divorce, you will have so much knowledge around the state of your life. And what I mean by that is, before I went through the divorce process, I had a job, I knew what my paycheck was, I went through the day-to-day kind of thing. I was sort of going through the motions. When you're confronted with divorce, all of a sudden, you get a really clear picture of what your life looks like, what it looks like on paper, what your assets and resources are on paper. Also what you're dividing, which tells you what I want and what I don't want. And then you start thinking, okay, what do I want in my life? What don't I want in my life? So divorce gives you clarity. It will give you the biggest, best picture of what that current life looks like. And that becomes a foundation for you to make the change you want. Because it'll be really clear to you what serves you in that picture and what doesn't. And with that information, with that knowledge, you're able to make the positive change you want. And hopefully you're using it to reinvent your life in the way you want. And hopefully you've been prepared, not thrown away a ton of money in this divorce because you're not looking at it as war. And that means you have the money to create the vision that you want. There is a smart way to go through this divorce. And most people don't do that because they heard someone go through divorce and they believe those stories or they believe what they see on TV. Your divorce experience is going to be unique to you. But you can use it for positive change, and you can also use this experience as a way to move forward, to leap forward in your life in big, big ways. That was a surprise to me. I didn't realize how much of a transformation divorce would be for my entire life. So I invite you to look at divorce as an opportunity for growth and development and change, and not as a war, not as a battle, not something that has to be won. Again, the only winning here is personal peace that you achieve in this process, and peace with yourself, that you know what your path is and you're walking the path. So I hope you find that valuable, and I hope you listen to my video next week. Obviously, feel free to go to moxielifecoach.com for all of my other free resources. You can check out the Divorce Toolkit, because getting prepared is the way to save money in this process. And obviously, I also offer free consultations to discuss your situation, your context, and whether coaching is a good fit. So until next week, speak the truth, even when your voice shakes.